The committee is still in the process of threshing out its terms of reference. It was established following allegations by the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi of serious corruption in the criminal justice system. The Umkhonto weSizwe party made a submission that protocols should be agreed on regarding how classified and sensitive information will be dealt with. A decision was made that existing protocol for how Parliament handles classified information will be followed. Parliament's legal advisor, Andile Tetyana.
Documents are placed in a safe set aside for this purpose, equipped with two different locks. The Speaker or her nominee and the Secretary of Parliament or his nominee ensure the safekeeping of the safe keys and its contents. In order to gain access to the documents, it will be necessary for both key bearers to unlock the safe, take the documents to a controlled venue, and there, in a formal way, make them available only full members committee.
South Africa's Rise Mzansi party leader Songezo Zibi has called for the dismissal of the National Defence Force General Rodzani Mapwanya after the comments he made in Iran. Zibi says these comments undermine the interests of South Africans. He says the Minister of Defence is spineless for refusing to hold him to account. The party's leader was briefing the media on Rise Mzansi's 12 months in the Parliament and the Government of National Unity.
Pakistan and Ronald Lamula are busy trying to save South African jobs. The US and Iran are enemies. What does this general do? He goes there, he runs his mouth because he has no strategic awareness whatsoever, undermining the work that Pakistan and Ronald Lamula are doing. Why would he do that? There is a feeling by South Africans that he's a general, he should be able to say anything. Nonsense. That's ill-discipline. He must be fired.
Lastly, the Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa has been visiting the Rafah border crossing alongside Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati to highlight difficulties in getting aid into Gaza. Warehouses on the Egyptian side are packed with supplies for civilians, but the other side is closed by Israeli troops. The BBC's Yolanda now.
Part of what Egypt is trying to achieve here is to kind of hit back at some of the regional criticism that there has been of it as the humanitarian crisis has deepened in Gaza itself. But also, I think this is Egypt, again, looking to boost the Palestinian Authority. It's really wanted to come up with a sort of detailed roadmap for a post-war Gaza that involves this entity, even though Israel has been rejecting that.
Recapping on your top stories, prosecutors in the Democratic Republic of Congo have asked a court to sentence the former Justice Minister Constant Mutamba to 10 years in prison for attempting to embezzle public funds. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Rwandan football club Ryan Sports to pay former coach $22,000, while Tennis South Africa president has ideas of getting a new CEO. I'll expand on these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Tamin Gubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 7 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. Good Monday it is, and a rather busy one as well on the business front. Here's what we've got in store for you. This past weekend, the 45th Ordinary Summit of the SADC heads of state and government met in Madagascar. Will focus on what was on their agenda. They were really looking at regional integration this year and how to strengthen industrial capacity through modernizing agriculture as well as promoting inclusive energy. We will be speaking this afternoon to Kevin Tutani, who is a political economist, also focusing on the minerals this afternoon as we take a look at the latest developments coming out of Uganda. You will remember that they recently launched their first large-scale gold mine, and they're therefore looking at increasing their gold exports and also expanding the mining industry in general in the country and establishing themselves as a major gold producer. We'll be speaking this afternoon to Sostine Namaya, East Africa coordinator for the Right to Say No efforts at Women. That and a whole lot more coming up this afternoon on Africa in Business.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Our first stop this afternoon is Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has set an ambitious goal of achieving 7% annual economic growth, aiming to pull the nation out of its current financial challenges. In the first quarter, Nigeria's economy expanded by 3.13%, a figure partly driven by a recent rebasing of the country's gross domestic product. This rebasing increased the GDP to over $243 billion, although the growth rate still fell short of expectations. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa has more details.
President Tinubu stated that the reforms implemented have strengthened economic stability and boosted investor confidence. However, he noted that the public savings remain a constraint on growth. Critics of the president argue that he has not met the expectations that propelled him to power 14 years ago. Development economist Ayobami Oyolowo says the Nigerian economy is now stable.
The economy is now stable. That means we have achieved a relatively stable macroeconomics as it is now. Our growth rate is about 3.0, 3.4 thereabouts, so which is positive. However, to achieve a $1 trillion economy is not a policy pronunciation matter. There must be very serious work that will go into such achievement if we must achieve it. It's just 5 years. In fact, you said a decade. It's not a decade. It's just, we're already in 2025 and we're almost at the end of 2025. Before another 2 weeks, we are into the Ember month, and that means we are almost out of 2025. So we have just 4 years to make that leap if we must do it.
Nigeria's GDP rebasing raised the economy's value to $243.55 billion, yet growth remains modest at 3.13%. From an economic perspective, how much of this growth reflects actual productivity gains versus statistical adjustments? And is the targeted growth achievable? Oyolowo provides insights.
Yes, it is achievable, but it is not a tea party. What do I mean? First and foremost, we must do one thing first. We must feed Nigerians. In terms of agriculture, we are not doing what we ought to do yet. We have to get the critical aspect of our economy working, agriculture and the small and medium scale enterprises. Now, to grow an economy, yes, you will be happy if you have the Dangote, but beyond those ones, you need the small and medium scale enterprise, because those are the ones that will bring in the critical mass. Do you understand? You have to create you have to put money in the hand of the smaller people. As it is right now, we are almost out of what you call the middle class.
He says the country must deal with basic needs first.
Housing in Lagos, unfortunately, is not just Lagos, for poor people to live in. So we must provide all this in terms of housing, food, and shelter. If you provide shelter for people and they are fed, then we can now begin to do the next stage, which is consumption to production. You see, you can't build an economy when you don't produce. Almost everything we do, or we use, or we depend on, or we consume, is imported.
While President Tinubu highlights progress in microeconomic stability and investor confidence, challenges like low public savings continue to hold back growth. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Simons in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 13 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, this past weekend, the SADC heads of state met at the 45th Ordinary Summit of the Southern African Development Community, otherwise known as SADC Heads of State and Government, in Antananarivo in Madagascar. The leaders met to review achievements under the 44th Summit, which was themed Promoting innovation to unlock opportunities for sustained economic growth and development towards an industrialized SADC. The 45th Ordinary Summit was focused on accelerating regional integration through strengthening industrial capacity and regional value chains, modernizing agriculture, as well as promoting an inclusive energy transition. To discuss the progress that was made towards industrializing the SADC region, we're joined this afternoon by an independent policy researcher and political economics, Kevin Tutani. A very good afternoon to you, Kevin. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure to be here with you, actually.
It's great. So how would you, Kevin, describe the current state of industrialization within the SADC region? You will remember that this was actually the focus, very much so, of the previous summit, which is the 44th one.
We're doing pretty badly. I mean, SADC is deindustrialized. A lot of industrialization has gone to China and other emerging market economies, Vietnam, etc. South Africa, for instance, it used to have manufacturing used to contribute around 24% of GDP to GDP. Right now, that's in the 1980s, right? Okay. Right now, in 2025, manufacturing contributes around 13% to GDP in South Africa. In Zimbabwe, it is also halved, if you can put it that way. So we're not doing too good, and we need to actually make some changes there.
The 45th Summit was, yes, about the new theme for this year, but also about recapping the achievements of the progress that has been made from the 44th Summit. Given what you are saying and the summary of the fact that there really hasn't been much progress as far as industrializing SADC is concerned, were there some measures put in place or suggested and tabled of how this trajectory can be turned around?
Right. The chairmanship of Zimbabwe, which lasted obviously the last 12 months, which ended in August 2025, so August 2023 to August 2020, August 2024 to August 2025, that's the chairmanship of Zimbabwe. This chairmanship now was particularly, putting in work regarding oversight of, existing policies within SADC. It was advocating for the adoption of the SADC free trade area, the SADC FTA. It was promoting it so that it is adopted, practically in a better way. It was actually promoting as well the African Continental Free Trade Agreement as well, amongst other things. And a number of things were going on. So it was moving with and advocating for existing policies and did not introduce anything new. And amongst those that it was advocating for, like I'm saying, we're still a little bit behind, and there's work on the ground to be done.
The key focus for the 45th Ordinary Summit was accelerating regional integration. Did the leaders expand and come up with solutions on how to do this? How are they going to expand trade? How are they going to expand manufacturing in the region? And is this feasible given the barriers that still exist that actually do limit this cross-border trade?
Right. There is a north-south corridor, right, which aims to create robust infrastructure from the port of Durban all the way into DRC. It aims to have serious investments going into roads, rail, air, which connect these areas within SADC, Durban, all the way Zimbabwe, Zambia, in between, all these countries nearby to DRC. That's the north and south corridor. They have actually established a strategy, but they don't particularly have a roadmap which indicates on which date which part of the strategy will be implemented. So there is no roadmap. But what we saw at the summit that occurred yesterday in Madagascar was that the summit released a communique which actually conveyed that the Secretariat of SADC has now been instructed to design a roadmap which will show which parts of the strategy, the north-south infrastructure corridor to accelerate trade and integration and industrialization will be implemented. So those are some of the things that they've been working on.
There's one thing that we cannot shy away from, Kevin, and that is the lack of uniformity as far as industrialization is concerned in the different member countries. So how do these differing levels of economic development affect the region's ability to industrialize collectively? Because that's the whole idea, right? To do this jointly.
Yes, it has to be because you look at value chains such as new energy value chains where critical minerals, where actually I'll put it this way, where batteries for new energy vehicles are made, batteries for stationary storage are made. For national grids, you want to store your battery. You have a solar, system at your home. You want to buy a lithium battery. In order for SADC to actually begin to manufacture these batteries, we need to at least have, DRC taking a portion of the manufacturing, Botswana taking a portion of the manufacturing, South Africa, and then Zimbabwe. You see, because if that doesn't happen, it's going to be quite difficult to actually put it into implementation, this kind of industrialization. So you need energy in DRC, energy in Botswana, and these are missing infrastructure. It's not yet there. They don't have even electricity, the basics which sustain industries.
You talk about this diversification and expansion of territories. How feasible is this? Because already there are some countries within SADC that say that South Africa seems to be the one that benefits the most from these regional trade agreements. Is that a fair assessment or a fair complaint that has been put down?
I wouldn't take it as a complaint for a number of reasons. Because South Africa seems to benefit better from SADC trade because it has more structured industries. But you look at other countries within SADC, they have a larger informal sector. And on that basis, it's harder for informal players to fulfill the requirements of trade. When you're exporting your merchandise, you need to actually fulfill the rules of origin to prove that your merchandise is actually coming from your country. You need certificates of origin. You need a number of things that informal players do not have. And on account of that, South Africa has big industries, concentrated markets, and it's easier for them to fulfill. So I wouldn't look at it as a South Africa taking advantage, not at all. But there might be some changes, needed to be made. For example, SADC needs to relax some of its trade policies. For instance, informal players should be allowed to export with simplified certificates of origin, which do not have complicated procedures for them to be fulfilled, something of that sort.
We've spoken about relations amongst the SADC countries themselves, but can we cast our net a little bit wider and look at the balance of trade with external partners such as the EU, for example? I'm thinking China and even the United States. Has SADC managed to balance those external partners with a strengthening inter-regional trade?
Well, look, in terms of our trade with the likes of China, for instance, we have, in Africa as a whole, SADC included, we have deep trade deficits in basic things, in stuff such as clothing, you can imagine, we have deep trade deficits there. But you look at us, we have potential to farm cotton, we have potential actually we've done it before, to produce our own textiles. So there's a number of gaps that we can close within our trade deficits with some of these partners, if you can put it that way.
As we wrap up today, we've just come out of, or let me not say this because I may be speaking too quickly, of the US tariff negotiations. In your assessment, how did SADC deal with the US tariffs? Could they, as a region, have reacted in a way that would have been more beneficial to them as a collective?
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's a number of things that can be done even until now. All right, only that the tariffs have come into effect, but before they came into effect, SADC could have upended them. It could have had a strategy ready on how to address these tariffs before they came into effect. You look at, for example, between Zimbabwe and South Africa, we have chrome resources, 90% of the world's chrome, and there is no substitute for chrome anywhere if you want to make quality steel. So these are critical. Between Zimbabwe and South Africa, there's also more than 90% of the world's platinum as well. So these are some of the things. There are a number of areas that could have been leveraged to get more influence with the United States. But I think the horses we've almost bolted really, but we can still correct some of what we did wrong.
I wonder, Kevin, if we can. But that remains to be seen. As you say, you never know what the next day brings with Donald Trump, and these negotiations do continue on one level or the other. Thank you so much for your insight this afternoon. Very much appreciated.
Thank you too.
Thank you. That is independent policy researcher and political economist Kevin Tutani. He takes us to exactly 23 minutes after 4 p.m.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheky Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheky?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Millvest Advisory and City of Umhlathuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. By positioning these regions for sustainable growth, TIFA, or the Tourism Investment Forum Africa, helps drive their economic ambitions while providing access to critical capital, networks and strategic insights on investment in trade, in services, sectors such as tourism. Join us for TIFA 2025 from August the 27th to August the 29th at Tembela Venue in Richards Bay, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Be part of the movement transforming tourism and infrastructure in Africa.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 25 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, Uganda is looking at increasing its revenue through the gold exports. This after the East African country launched its first large-scale gold mine, a $250 million Chinese-owned project that includes facilities to refine bullion to 99.9% purity. Now, this is part of an effort by Kampala to expand its mining industry as well as to establish itself as a major gold producer. According to the country's central bank data, last year, Uganda raised $3.4 billion from gold exports. Now, that's about 37% of the country's total export revenue. For more on this, we joined on the line by Sostine Namanya, East Africa Coordinator for the Right to Say No efforts at Women. A very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Hello, thanks for having me. Good evening, listeners. Lovely to be here.
Awesome. So how do Uganda's current gold export compare to those of Ghana? We know Ghana is Africa's top producer. How is Uganda faring in comparison to Ghana?
Thank you. So Uganda has definitely become one of the largest exporters of gold within the last few years. And we also witnessed there's a bit of also re-exports as well from the neighboring countries, especially the DRC, but also our brothers and sisters in South Sudan. But definitely Ghana still tops it with around 7.5 billion, and Uganda is still around 2.2 billion tons. And also we witnessed that there is also like increasing gold scrutiny, especially with the conflicts that are happening in the DRC, militarization from the DRC and also from Uganda. So there is a little bit of that difference. And I think the right question that we should also be trying to answer is that the real comparison should be whose lives and whose lands are being sacrificed if we are to compare and try to see who is shining and also who is exporting more gold on the international market. Yes.
Looks like you're ready for this fight. You're ready for this challenge. Do you think that efforts such as these and initiatives such as this would position Uganda to become a more competitive gold producer in East Africa and indeed across the continent?
Interesting. So looking at what's happening within my country, Uganda, and then also looking at the global politics when it comes to gold mining and exports. First of all, we need to look at the figures that have been shared in line with the new Wagagai project. So they talked about 1.5 million tons of gold, which is a number that is a bit also exaggerated. And we definitely need to ask the ministry to be able to cross-check that. And I think which is also a big risk because it makes Uganda a target for rich countries such as America, because these figures are a bit high. And I think when you look at Uganda being positioned in a sense of, being able to be one of East Africa's biggest mines, you also don't forget that we are in the electioneering period. So this government has waited for 40 years plus to be able to commission a gold mine of this big magnitude. So there is also a question around that. But nevertheless, we see gold mine areas such as the Geita in Tanzania, which is big with Ashanti mining, also working and doing well in terms of what's available and what's to be mined. But the critical questions are about the figures, are about why now, why in the presidential electioning period, just to entice voters so that they know the government is doing something to promote Uganda's economy. So I'll leave it.
And I mean, one can really say that despite the motives, one is going to be seeing an economic impact and the economic impact of this new positioning. But I'd like us to focus just for a moment as we wrap up on this $250 million gold mine project that is backed by the Chinese. Based on what you're saying, it clearly does fit into Russia, rather Uganda's broader industrial and economic strategy. But in several countries, we've seen Chinese mining companies being found to have contravened some environmental laws. Has the project disclosed any environmental impact assessments or social safeguards to address concerns such as artisanal mining, that tends to be quite a big one, them being displaced, the issues of land use and ecological degradation as well?
Mm-hmm. Interesting question. So from what I scan and gather, and with some of the communities that I've reached out to, is that yes, we see information which is that they've already invested all this money. For example, they talked about investing $160 million US, and the value of the gold is around $166 million. So they are in Uganda for 21 years. And so this deal is not for Ugandan, it's for Chinese. And I think the worry also is that the biggest question is who is going to benefit? Is it Uganda? Is it the local communities or China? Definitely China is going to benefit more. The 21 years they are in Uganda, they are on lease, they are on land that they've not been able to compensate and meaningfully consult the communities so that they are able to be relocated in a fair and just way. And also looking at one of the villages or districts where this mining has been commissioned, which is called Busia. Busia remains one of the poorest districts in Uganda. Poor roads, no access to water, high levels of GBV and women discrimination, and very patriarchal. So we see that once this is done, they'll still be left in poverty. And the problem is that these profits are not going to show back in the roads, in the water, in community women efforts and land rights. But these efforts are going to be repatriated. And I think this still stems from the question you asked about consultation, environmental safeguards. The problem is that when you move around one of other gold areas or mining villages in Uganda, let's say Kasanda, Namaingo, we see the Chinese who are doing artisanal mining in these villages. Nothing has changed. These communities are still suffering. They still have the most poor roads. They still have the most increased violence.
Sistine, and unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. But I think, you've really highlighted the enormous responsibility that corporates and governments have in ensuring that whatever developments take place, and as much as they may be of economic positivity for the countries involved, they've got to benefit the communities, and they've got to uplift the communities where they're planted and not seep from them. But we thank you very much for your insight this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Sostine Namaya, East Africa Coordinator for the Right to Say No efforts at Women, looking at Uganda's gold exports, this new mine, or rather facility that has been put in place in Uganda, as well as how the communities around that facility in Busia, for example, are going to be impacted. She says the Chinese are the biggest winners and not Ugandans themselves. She takes us to exactly 4:33 Central African time, slightly delayed as we make our way through to the markets desk, where Matapelo Mahape is standing by with your latest indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Tammy. A look at your financial indicators. $1 is trading at 17 rands 57 cents in South Africa. In Botswana, it's trading at 13 pula 24. In Namibia, it is trading at 17 Namibian dollars 57 cents, while the Zambian kwacha is trading at 23 kwacha 12 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 35. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 141 birr. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 504. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 612. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 531. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 48 Egyptian pound 25 cents. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 87. In Algeria, it is trading at 129 dinar 23, while in Morocco, the dollar is trading at only 9 dirham. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,875 to the US dollar. Look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $3,341 and platinum at $1,329 per ounce, while the Brent crude oil is at $65.80 a barrel. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapelo Mahape.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is exactly 4:35 Central African time for the business of sport. Here is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Tammy. A very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. So former France midfielder Lassana Diarra is restarting legal proceedings seeking $78 million in compensation from FIFA as well as the Royal Belgian Football Association. So Diarra has had a long-running legal battle with the World Football Governing Body FIFA, with his legal team now having challenged some of FIFA rules after the termination of his contract with Lokomotiv Moscow back in 2014. So in October of last year, the Court of Justice of European Union found that FIFA rules which govern the way some football transfer work break European Union laws. The player who played in the Premier League for Chelsea, Arsenal as well as Portsmouth said on Monday that he'd hoped that FIFA as well as the Belgian Football Federation would at least have the decency, he said, to approach him to propose an amicable settlement between the two parties. Meanwhile, the Rwandan football club Rayon Sports will reportedly pay former coach Robertino $22,000 to settle outstanding salary claims. This follows a complaint filed by Robertino with the Rwandan Football Federation, where he sought $20,000 for unpaid salaries. He has also requested payment for the end of the football year, which equates to more than $29,000. Robertino was recently suspended by the club due to health issues and has not returned to the team. Further afield now, Nottingham Forest have signed Rennes striker Arnaud Calimendo on a 5-year contract for a reported fee of $46 million. The Frenchman scored 18 goals in 34 appearances just last season for Rennes and finished in 12th place in League One. Forest had already also spent around $154 million on 6 players in the summer transfer window before also making his the latest signing of the player. Now, over over the weekend, they also brought in winger Omaria Hutchinson from Ipswich Town for $57.5 million and spent close to $50 million on Manchester City midfielder James McEntee. Back home now, Tennis South Africa President Gavin Crooks has hinted at promoting General Manager Anthony Moratani to the position of CEO. Moratani, who started out as a volunteer before rising to the head of media communications as later General Manager, has been with the Federation for more than 10 years. Currently pursuing his MBA, he is also being considered to replace former CEO Andre Homan, who stepped down at the end of 2021 after 5 years in charge. Crooks told SABC Sport that Moratani had been shown his competency as the general manager and also doing CEO duties, making him the ideal choice for a permanent role as the CEO of the association.
Anthony is our general manager. He's effectively doing most of the tasks and responsibilities that a CEO would. I think without breaking too many confidences, I think it's probably likely that Anthony will become our CEO in title, if that's what we want to call it. Effectively, he's doing that anyway. And with my help and guidance and mentorship, etc., we're ticking many of the boxes that there was a gap. I wasn't in the office 24/7. It definitely needs someone in the office 24/7.
Now in his third term as the president, Crooks says sponsors are quite impressed with the work that Moratani has been able to do as a general manager. He also added that Moratani is successfully negotiating new sponsorship deals and also delivering results in that area.
Believe, and I'm seeing, if you look at what's happened, during Wimbledon at Monte Casino, Anthony ran all that, and our sponsors, Amex, American Express, and Nedbank are over the moon with that. We're in the process, Anthony's in the process of negotiating the renewal of that sponsorship, and we're very positive as.
Well, that's a wrap of your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Millvest Advisory and the city of Umhlathuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. As a global platform for local action, the Tourism Investment Forum Africa aims to promote secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. Be part of the movement transforming tourism investment in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from the 27th to the 29th of August at Tembela Venue in Richards Bay, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Ngobeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Taking a look now at the South Africa's University of Zululand, they're currently hosting the 3rd International Conference on Earth and Environmental Sciences. This is being held in the KwaZulu-Natal province. The event, which is held in collaboration with China's Jiang University, has drawn global experts to address pressing challenges that are facing the planet. Our reporter, Lebogang Mabange, has more.
The 8-day conference began on Sunday, the 17th of August, and has attracted participants from across the world, including researchers, scientists, industry representatives, and students. The aim is to bridge the gap between research and implementation while fostering collaboration in tackling environmental threats. Vice-Chancellor of the University of Zululand, Professor Xoliswa Mtose, says the gathering comes at a critical time for the planet.
The conference takes place at a time when the entire world is buffeted by storms, which portends a hydrogeological and environmental calamity. Professor Alumni could not have captured this impending geological disaster better. Professor Alumni noted that, open quote, time is slipping away. No continent is safe. Weather patterns are extremely and dangerous. The fragile balance of biodiversity is in peril.
She adds that the conference is a platform for meaningful scientific exchange and innovation.
This conference, comprising participants from South Africa and across the globe, including researchers, scientists, professors, industry representatives, and students, presents a unique opportunity to engage, share, and discussing scientific questions arising of this impending threat to our very planet Earth and to human life. The conference will also explore advances, experiences, and innovative ideas relating to earth and environmental sciences.
South Africa's Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Bladen Nzimande, says African universities must take their rightful place in shaping the global research agenda.
Where one of the fundamental challenges facing the scientific community today, which also Professor Mtosa has pointed to, is the imbalance in the world system of knowledge production. While we value collaboration, we do not want our historically disadvantaged universities to be comfortable with simply being consumers of knowledge that others produce. Universities on the African continent must make their own distinct contribution to the global knowledge project.
Dr. Nzimande also highlighted the urgent need to tackle what he describes as the triple planetary crisis.
The world is faced with what is called the triple planetary crisis of the interconnected challenges of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. There is an unparalleled peak in climate-related crises, and no continent remains unaffected. We are increasingly witnessing life-threatening heat waves, floods, disappearing species, and the severe pressures on water as well as ecosystem.
The conference continues this week with plenaries, workshops, and collaborative sessions aimed at building sustainable solutions for the planet's future. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:45 Central African Time. The inaugural 3-day Water Investment Summit held in Cape Town, South Africa, has managed to get annual investments of between 10 and 12 billion US dollars. The African Union AIP Water Investment Summit sought to attract investment to address water scarcity on the continent, as well as close Africa's massive $30 billion water investment gap by promoting bankable projects and fostering partnerships. Ndlandla Mahlangu attended the summit and filed this report.
The summit brought together heads of state, ministers, investors, and partners to mobilize at least $30 billion annually for climate-resilient water and sanitation initiatives across the continent and to discuss ways to make serious investment in water. African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development and Sustainable Development, Moses Vilakati, says the summit was highly successful.
Africa showcased 80 priority water investment projects from 38 different countries, which attracted an investment projection of between 10 to 12 billion US dollars a year through public and private sector participation. These projected figures do not include anticipated pledges and investments that will be consolidated in the coming 2 weeks. An online portal will be opened to enable more pledges and investment commitments. We came together, ladies and gentlemen, with a shared mission to close Africa's US $30 billion annual water investment gap. This is a huge gap, and we leave with renewed momentum, concrete commitments, and a bold vision for the future.
The Minister of Water and Sanitation in South Africa, Phemi Majodina, says governance, finance capacity and data gaps in the water sector have been identified as challenges that need to be addressed going forward.
We're making a call as this summit to all governments to help to level the playing field in order to attract investors. Investors cannot invest when there is political instability. Investors don't want a risk of investing in a country which has no political will. Let us ensure that unnecessary red tapes in government that are holding back investors are attended to.
Delegate Bolo Onobolo, chairperson of the Regional Consultative Council for Water Resources Management for the ECOWAS countries, says the voice of the civil society was not strongly reflected.
A lot has been said about sustainability, but I find that the role that civil society must play in helping to strengthen systems, in helping to ensure that the investments are properly operated and managed by the users. I find the voice of the civil society not reflected strongly enough.
Another delegate from Pretoria, South Africa, Oscar Mala, says there needs to be more engagement with the SME sector.
Let us engage SME into the water sectors, because without inclusivity in our economy, in the sectors, we cannot be able to bridge the gap in African countries with unemployment. Because every year, children are graduated, are seated at home. Some other, they end up committing suicide because they don't get where they can be absorbed. In the next conference, let us sing also trying to engage SME in the water sectors so that they can benefit, contribute in the local economy of African countries.
The summit showcased multi-billion-dollar opportunities in the water sector, ongoing bulk water projects, and strategies to de-risk investments. With over 80 investment-ready water and sanitation projects showcased, the gathering emphasized special economic zones, climate-resilient financing, and integrated water management to drive socio-economic transformation. It saw matchmaking sessions for investors, financing panels, and the 2025 Water Changemaker Awards, recognizing innovative solutions in water stewardship. It culminated in a summit declaration to be presented to G20 leaders in November 2025, outlining commitments to favorable financing terms, project bankability, and data-driven decision-making. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Tlantla Mahlangu.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:51 Central African Time as we focus on our weekly market slot with FNB. We're joined this afternoon by FNB Senior Economist Siphamandla Mkhwanazi. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Thank you for having me, Tammy. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to your listeners.
So let's take a look perhaps first at some inflationary issues. There really has recently been a downward trend with forecasts for 2025, indicating perhaps a not too favorable atmosphere as far as inflation is concerned. But what are your inflationary expectations for SA?
Yeah, so the inflation trend depicts a year of two halves in 2025. In the first half of the year, we saw inflation prints going as low as 2.7, 2.8, which are things that we hadn't seen since 2020, when no one could buy anything really. And the second half was always expected to depict an upward trend in inflation. Now, there are two key drivers behind that. The first one, as you would have already received your utility bill, is that in the month of July, we usually get these increases in our utilities, water, electricity, and the like. And looking at electricity alone, double-digit increase. The second aspect is what farmers are currently grappling with, foot and mouth disease, particularly affecting red meat production. So slaughtering rates have come down quite substantially, pushing up red meat prices. Now, in the midst of all of that, you get consumers who are switching to white meat, and white meat producers are now seeing increased demand, and they see an opportunity to take advantage of that and also increase prices. And so you see this vicious cycle. So in the second half, higher inflation. We expect in the month of July that it's going to print at 3.6%, up from 3% in the previous month, again from a low of about 2.7% in the first half of the year.
Well, we are expecting, or rather we did see in the previous SARB meeting, the rates were cut. What are you expecting in the next meeting taking place in September?
Yeah. Now, given the fact that we are in this rising phase of inflation, it's quite unthinkable. It's quite difficult for the SARB to cut in that environment, especially when the projections for 2026, especially in the first half of 26, suggest that we will continue to see this trend with inflation actually peaking at above 4%. Now, we know that in their previous meeting, they announced their preference for a 3%. So at those levels, inflation would be above their preferred target of 3%. So we think they are going to use the opportunity to keep interest rates on hold to guide inflation expectations to that 3% target. So hold for now until we get back closer to that 3% target.
Now, a lot of eyes as well are on the US Fed. Will their rate decisions impact us in South Africa?
Yeah. So the Fed, the way to think about the US Fed is, anything you want to do in international trade, in international finance, has a dollar at the center of it. Now, the Fed's decisions on interest rates directly affect the strength of the dollar, and therefore all of us are then indirectly affected. So whatever they do there has an indirect impact on all of us, including South Africa. It does not follow, though, Tammy, that the South African Reserve Bank has to follow what the Fed is doing. For example, we have seen 3 rate cuts from the Reserve Bank this year. The Fed has not moved interest rates. So broadly, they set the scene, they set the tone, they dictate conditions, but local or domestic conditions have a final say on what interest rates are domestically.
Now, Siphamandla, you'll remember at the end of last week, the property barometer was released. What stood out for you in the property sector?
2 things. The first one is that we now see property values rising above inflation, meaning that your current owners are getting a real return. So it means their investments are growing in real terms. Now, that is good news for those who are already owners. Maybe not so much for those who are intending to go into the market. The second part is that we are now starting to see a reversal of dominant trends or trends that dominated the market during COVID. We did see, with the rise of working from home, South African buyers rushed to buy your bigger properties so that they could facilitate working from home and take a break and stretch their legs. So they gravitated more towards your bigger homes, your freestanding homes. Now, we've had to deal with a cost of living crisis. Interest rates were kept high for quite some time, and that seems to have had an impact in that it has now ushered in a trend where South Africans are again looking for more smaller, more compact properties, because we no longer spend as much time at home, but also because those type of properties or sectional type of properties offer you a much cheaper entry point. So those 2 key things for me stood out in our recent property barometer.
I'd like to put this into the equation, Siphamandla, if you could just deliberate on this for a moment. How much of a factor is security in the sense that gated properties, yes, in as much as they may be smaller, less maintenance, etc., but does security and the levels of crime impact, how the economy moves as far as property sector is concerned?
That is an important consideration. Our FNB estate agent survey shows that round about 1 in 10 of the upgrades of those people who are selling their current property to upgrade actually go into estates, and their primary reason, apart from the amenities, apart from everything else, specifically speaks to security issues. So it is an important consideration in the entire ecosystem. However, those properties tends to be on the higher end of the price point. However, it does fit into this narrative that we are currently speaking about.
Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for today's market update.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's FNB senior economist Siphamandla Mkhwanazi. He takes us to the end of the Monday edition of Africa in Business on Channel Africa. It is exactly 1 minute to 5 p.m. Central African Time. From myself, Tami Ngubeni, as well as our entire team, our producer, Mabu Buloka, and social media talent Abu Telezi, and also our news team, Onelin Zinzi, economics desk, Masapelo Mahape, on sport, Misubudi Makuru, and our technical producer as well this afternoon. Until tomorrow, you have yourself a splendid day further as we leave you with VuesdAfrique.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joelle Muteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h.